All right, everyone. I think we'll get started. Other people might roll in as we get going, but that's okay. Um, just want to thank you all for joining us today for Katie's workshop, How to Sell at a Farmer's Market. Maybe some of you were present for her part one of this workshop series, Running a Farmer's Market, which took place 2 weeks ago. It's so nice to see you again. If not, welcome here. These professional development workshops have been brought to you by the Northern Arts and Food Project, a partnership between Food and Beverage Manitoba and Creative Manitoba. This particular two-part workshop series has been brought to you in partnership with Community Futures Manitoba. Before we get started, I would just like to acknowledge that Creative Manitoba is located on Treaty 1 territory, the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene people, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. We acknowledge and pay respect to the ancestors and treaties made on these lands by considering all our cultures, traditions, and the histories of colonialism, dispossession, and resistance as we create and learn together. With that, I will hand it over to our presenter, Katie Daman.
Hi, everyone. I hope you've had an okay day. Thank you for coming and joining us tonight for this workshop on how to sell at a farmer's market. It's a pretty packed full workshop, so I'm gonna get into it pretty quickly here. I know that we have quite a number of people registered, so I imagine we'll have some trickling in as we go, which will be great because we are going to have a few discussions here as well this evening. So welcome here. My name is Katie. I'm talking to you today with some amount of experience, and so I wanted to share a little bit about what that is and how I ended up here chatting about farmers markets and selling at a farmers market. In 2016, I was part of the group that started the South Osborne Farmers Market, and I ran that farmers market for a number of years. I am based in Treaty 1. I grew up in Treaty 1 just outside of Winnipeg in Niverville, Manitoba, and I now live in Winnipeg, as I mentioned, in the South Osborne neighborhood. What else? I have an undergrad in business, so it's kind of a personal interest of mine to support local businesses and as well kind of bolster the community economic development sector. I chatted with so many people at the farmers market over the years. Sabrina's, correcting the international treaty document saying that Winnipeg is actually the only, the territory of the Ojibwe and the Cree. Thanks for that correction. I know that many people honor different groups in their treaty acknowledgements. And I've always been curious about Dene, especially coming into Winnipeg. There's lots of different research that goes on there. So thank you for the correction there, Sabrina. So anyways, I am also someone who grows a lot of their own food. I hunt, I butcher chickens. So I care a lot about the local food system and food sovereignty, and just having a lot of food agency in our own lives. So that's a huge part of the reason why I'm here today chatting about farmers markets and why I love farmers markets so much and why I think they have a lot of potential to support our communities. And that's kind of why I talk about this a little bit, where I believe that art, food, and culture are at the heart of a healthy community, and that they shape our sense of belonging and identity, and that we can build community around these things. So I often work on projects that support my own and other communities that want to build up the art, food, and culture. In this farmers market, we're going to have a number of different topics that we go over. As I said, it's going to be pretty packed full. Thank you to everyone who was able to offer some feedback into these topics ahead of time. But there's going to be something for everyone, and also there may be areas that we focus on that you were not interested in, but this was kind of the bulk of the feedback that I received that people wanted to talk about. today. So we'll start with an introduction to farmers markets, and that's going to be kind of our area where we have a little bit more discussion, and then go over some business and product development. Then we'll move into food safety and farmers market guidelines, which will be a little bit of a repeat from the last workshop, but people wanted to go over it again. And then I am going to show a video, if it works out, of a vendor sharing about her experience in marketing, promotions, and customer relationships. Then we'll end with talking about what a day at the farmers market looks like. And I just want to acknowledge that this workshop has been compiled through a combination of primary research, secondary research, and direct experience. It's not legal advice. It's meant for information sharing purposes only. And I'll point you to Food and Beverage Manitoba, your local health inspector, Manitoba Agriculture, if you have any questions that I can't answer. So we'll start with chatting about what is a farmer's market, because it's a lot of different things, it turns out. These are some photos from the South Osborne Farmers Market. I'm just wondering if folks could start off by putting in the chat, or you can also unmute and just share what you think the farmers market is. What does it mean to have a farmers market? Anyone want to give it a go in the chat, or you're welcome to unmute as well. Local organized pop-up trade stand, a place to connect with the community and support one another. Yeah, totally, I agree. So this is kind of a common definition of a farmer's market, but there are so many, and we're going to talk about what a farmer's market means. Cheryl says, it used to mean a local sale with locally grown produce and foods. Now it can also include handmade crafts, and it's a great place to come together, and there can be music too. Yeah, totally. I love when there's music at farmers markets. Yeah, it's a place to share ideology about food sovereignty. In the most ideal world, I totally agree. I think that's what it should be as well. That's just my personal opinion. So farmers market is often a marketplace where vendors come together on a reoccurring basis. So in some schedule usually to sell fresh fruits, vegetables, dairy, fish, meats, and other food products. Also handmade items like artwork, crafts, jewelry, clothing, furniture, etc. are often sold at farmers markets. A lot of farmers markets have a make it, bake it, or grow it policy. So that means that all products available must be produced in some way by the vendor selling it. But every farmer's market is unique. So some are small. You might have like 5 vendors. You might operate seasonally only in the summer, while others might be larger, maybe you have 40, 50 vendors. You might run it all year round, or it might just be a once a year event. So you could have just one big farmer's market once a summer, or if it's a craft market, then it might be once kind of in the holiday season. And some farmers markets or markets generally will focus only on food or craft products, while others will have more variation in their vendors. Like here we have someone doing clowning at the farmers market in this photo, which I think is lovely and super fun. Some markets will host events and activities, while other focus mainly on vendors selling products. And that's kind of, what I think people were alluding to a little bit in their comments too, that farmers markets can be so much more than just a marketplace. They can also help increase traffic to nearby businesses, as well as awareness of the activities that go on in the neighborhood. So they can be really incredible community building spaces. In this photo, there's a drop-in dance company that came to the farmers market to teach swing dancing, which I think is so creative and, build some awareness of their dance studio. And everyone is just, having a great time. Why would we shop at farmers markets? And I'm kind of thinking like compared to, the grocery store, for example. And feel free to, again, unmute or pop it into the chat if you have an idea of why you or other people might choose to shop at a farmer's market instead. Yeah, you know where your food comes from, and there's less of an environmental footprint on that food that you're purchasing. You can get specialty items from local sources. Support local appreciation of the arts and sustainability. Yeah, support the farmers, eat fresh. People enjoy knowing where the food is coming from, supporting the small businesses in the neighborhood, sustainability, less plastic, and less relying on big trucks to haul products in. So thinking about kind of that transportation and that footprint. Supporting friends and family. Yeah, I love that. So a lot of these you've already said, but I think they're still kind of inspiring. Delicious, fresh, special and well-made products. Yeah, Cheryl's adding because they're fun, which I think fits well with this picture. They can be important community gathering spaces where everyone, the vendors, the staff, the volunteers can work together to create a community hub that people want to be a part of. And they can create a sense of belonging, help you get to know your neighbors, which also can help you collaborate in a shared goal, like something like food sovereignty. They can connect people living in urban and rural or remote locations. So if you have a farmer coming in from outside of the city that you maybe wouldn't know or get to see very often, then that's a great connection. They're coming into the city to sell their products. And that not only grows community and our connection to people living in rural and remote areas, but also our connection to the land as we learn about how they care for the land and how they're connected to the land. Yeah, fresh food, often no preservatives or less preservatives with, the food being so fresh. This is something, these are some quotes that I shared in the last workshop too, but I just think they're so important to think about when we talk about farmers markets and when we talk about local food. And this again kind of gets to the heart of, I think, why a lot of people would come and shop at a farmer's market as opposed to the grocery store. So the move towards a local food economy is not just about freshness and food miles and carbon footprints and soil organic matter. It is about all of those things, but it's also about the deeply human desire for connection, to be in reciprocity with the gifts that are given to you. What we crave is not trickle-down faceless profits, but reciprocal face-to-face relationships, which are made naturally, or which are naturally abundant, but made scarce by the anonymity of large-scale economics. So, you got those big trucks coming in, you're at the grocery store and you often don't know where your food is coming from. And some people talked about wanting to know their farmers. We have the power to change that, I think, through farmers markets and things like that, to develop the local reciprocal economies that serve our communities rather than undermine it. And the last one here says, people come for a sense of connection to the land, a laugh with the farmer as a fellow human who cherishes the crisp fall air, not for the commodity of a pumpkin, which after all, you could buy anywhere. And this is from the essay, The Service Berry, so I included the link there if anyone's interested. That is an essay, and Robin Wall Kimmerer, the author of that essay, reads the essay, so you can also listen to it if you'd like. And then it also recently came out as a small book as well. So there's a lot of options if this is an area of interest for you to read more. And lastly, why we are here today to talk about selling at a farmer's market. So why might you choose to sell at a farmer's market? And I'm actually going to break folks off into breakout groups now. Presumably you might be a vendor, or you might know vendors, or you're thinking about selling at farmers markets. And so I just thought this might be a good opportunity to share with each other what motivates you to think about selling at a farmer's market. So let me just put you into breakout groups. Annie, Emmy? need you to do this. I'm not seeing the option today. Unless I'm missing it here. Sorry, everyone.
Try it now. I forgot to make you a co-host.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. Should have checked that ahead of time. Oops. Good. You're seeing ahead of the game here. Breakout rooms. Here we go. Okay. We got 14 people. So we're gonna do 5 breakout rooms. 4 breakout rooms. Yeah. Okay. There are the rooms if you'd like to go in and join a room. And I'll bring you back in about 5 minutes. I'll just wait for everyone to come back into the main room, and then if anyone wants to share what they talked about in their breakout rooms, you'd be welcome to do that. I think we still have a few more people coming in here. Just about everyone here. Okay. I think that's everyone. So, is anyone interested in sharing what they talked about in their breakout room? Why would you want to sell at a farmer's market?
So I can share.
Sure,
I
thanks, Sharon.
I totally took over our room, so sorry to the ladies that were in our room. I really talked a lot about the experience that the youth that I have here in the 4-H club get from a farmer's market.
Mhm.
Because their farmers market starts in the garden at their community garden where they're learning all about gardening, right from soil to planting to weeding to watering to harvesting, everything about a garden they learn. And then they prepare for their farmers market by, cleaning their produce, getting it ready to look nice and setting up their tables and making the signs and checking the prices so they're not undercutting other people. And they're learning how to make change and to talk to the public, and they're just learning a lot of skills. Whatever they don't sell fresh, they make it into something else that they can sell the next week, like jams, jellies, pickles, pies, loaves, all those good things. So it's really good for them. And not just that, but the public is seeing them and they're recognizing them. And
Yeah.
when they're applying for jobs and scholarships, they'll be the ones that are remembered because they're out there doing that community service and getting to know the public. So it's really beneficial for those reasons. For myself, it just makes me feel really good seeing young people do that kind of work. And because I'm also very community oriented, I like my community, I like my neighbors, and I really like to see them at the market, as well as all the other hard working vendors being successful with their sales.
Awesome. Thanks, Cheryl. And I see Sabrina here said in the chat that someone has an orchard. Yeah, that's really cool. Welcome here, whoever has the orchard, and all of you, of course. Does anyone else want to share?
I'm just here with my sister as well. We were in Cheryl's group, and Cheryl, I don't think you took over the group. So we were just saying, like, we've never like participated in like sold at a farmer's market, but we like to attend them. And we also really like arts and crafts. And we have another sister who grows a lot of flowers and has a big garden. And we just thought it would be awesome, instead of just having things that we give away to the same people over and over, to find another platform to share our things and meet with people. So yeah.
Amazing. That's exciting.
I can jump in for our group there. I was saying whenever I go to a farmer's market or pop-ups, I always end up like overspending and just
Yeah.
like buying more things than I need, because again, if you're kind of there like doing your part for community, helping out everyone else. So a lot of the stuff we've kind of gone over. And then we're saying like up here in the north, like farmers market's kind of like a new experience.
Mm,
Even that's kind of like a cool thing to like check out when they do happen.
yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Kyle. That's totally relatable. Okay, so I'm going to keep moving along here. These are just a few things that I had kind of identified and chatted about with other people in the past about why people might sell at a farmer's market. So, you know, Cheryl talked a lot about this, and Kyle, you're kind of talking about it from the customer's perspective, where farmers markets can help new and emerging makers to test their products, see what customers like, they can build their brand and grow their customer base. So if you're just starting out, it's an amazing place to see, you know, what sells, what do people like. It's a pretty low stakes environment as well. It's also a great place for vendors to learn from and alongside each other. So when they share space, they can chat about tips and tricks and share ideas about how to work together and, you know, what markets are out there and how to engage with customers and a whole other number of things. You know, workshops like this one, people might share with their other vendors that they know that a workshop is coming up, those types of things. A farmer's market is so great for relationship and community building. We've already chatted about this. I think everyone kind of feels it in their bodies, how good a farmer's market can feel when you're there. There's a lot of positive and personal connections and bonds of mutual benefit can be formed between vendors and shoppers in different communities that you might not have connected with on your own just through, you know, selling to your friends or your family members or through social media. And why I think it's important to talk about these things is I think reflections and observations about why people sell, shop at, and attend farmers markets can make us stronger and more engaged vendors. So you'll hear later on from a vendor in a video where she talks about how you are your best kind of the best person to market your product is you're really marketing yourself kind of when you're the one making the product too, and you're trying to connect with people personally and tell them why that product is important to you. Being really engaged and passionate about your product and about connecting with your customers, I think is a really key part of vending at farmers markets. So when we talk about farmers markets, I think a lot of people are curious, like who runs them, who's in charge, who do I talk to, what do those people do, like what's their role, especially because farmers markets can look so many different ways. So I just thought we'd chat about this a little bit. And the first person for sure that every market is going to have is a market coordinator. And this person can be paid. They might be paid through whatever organization is running that market if it's being run by an organization. If it's not, it might just be being run by like another vendor and they might be the market coordinator of that market, or it could be a volunteer. So just a community member who's super excited about farmers markets and wants to be involved in the community in this way, and they're volunteering their time to run the market. But the market coordinator is going to be your main point of contact for, you know, as a vendor, for any of the volunteers, as well as for the public health inspector. So today we're going to be talking about farmers markets that are permitted. You can take a lot of this information and apply it to whatever sort of market situation that you find yourself in. But this hopefully will give you more information so you know what the different options are and you have, you know, a bit of a sense of what to look for in farmers markets and what's going to be the right fit for you. So when a farmers market does have a permit, which is technically the legal way to go, then the market coordinator would be responsible for this permit. So they're responsible for organizing and operating the market to follow the provincial public health regulations. And there is one exception here that I'll chat about a bit later, which is if you're operating the market on reserve. There may be a board of directors as well. So if the market is being run by an organization that has a board of directors, they might be involved in the market. They could help guide the market staff or the volunteers to make the decisions and the policies about the market. So that's where you might have them kind of contributing to that idea that your product has to be made or baked or grown yourself. The board could be vendors, volunteers, or they also might be helping to coordinate the market. General volunteers are so important because I don't know a farmer's market that runs without volunteers. They absolutely make the market work. The role of the volunteer will vary, but usually they do help the market coordinator with the daily operation. So on the day of at the farmer's market. So this might be things like setting up, running an information table, greeting customers as they come and go. Volunteers shape the community that's built at the market by creating a welcoming and engaging environment for all people who attend the market, from vendors to customers to the other volunteers. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what goes into making a decision about whether a market is right for you. And one of the things that you might be thinking about is like, how does the market feel? Does it feel very welcoming? Are there lots of volunteers here who really enjoy their time and seem to be having fun and like contributing to this sort of community feeling? And yes, that's a beautiful zucchini. So how do you find the right market for you? For some of you, if you live in a rural or remote community, it might just be the only market in your community. That's going to be the one for you. But maybe you're thinking about, do I attend a summer market? Do I attend a craft sale? Do I attend it, during the holiday season? And during the holiday season, there are tons of markets going on often. So you might be thinking about which ones make sense for you in that period of time. So these are a few considerations you might want to think about before you attend a market or decide which market. And I will say, these are important considerations, but generally if the fee is low, it's a pretty low stakes decision. You can just experiment too. So the first one would be market regulations. So are you even eligible to attend that market? One example might be if you're a food vendor and you're applying for a craft market, do they have the permits that you need to sell your food in a way that feels safe and comfortable for you? Date and time. Does the market align with your work schedule? So you might, be doing this as a hobby. If you are processing a food product like jam, maybe you make all of your jam on the weekend, and the market is on the weekend. So does it align with your production schedule, or do you need a market that comes after all of your jam is made and you have a lot of jam to sell? Is the cost of the space rental affordable for you? So markets can range anywhere from like, some might actually be free or like $5 to like $100+. So you really want to be checking that price before you get really excited about attending a market. Does the market have new vendor support? So this is kind of like, do they have tables that you can rent if you don't have your own? Do they have a tent that you can rent if you don't have your own? Do they support you with marketing? So are they going to promote your products on their own social media page if you don't really have a following or a social media yet? And are these things important to you? Because maybe they're not. How close is the market to you? How much is it going to cost to drive there? Think about your time driving there. How long is it going to take to get there? Is that feasible for you? The vendor mix. This is one that I think is really important. So some markets will kind of control and curate their vendor mix. They might say, we don't want to have more than 3 bakers or 5 bakers, or we don't want to have all of our bakers selling the exact same thing. We don't want to have 5 vendors selling cookies because we don't think that any of them are going to do well. We don't know that it can be supported in our community at this stage of the market. Or we don't want to have 5 people selling honey, as an example. But if a market doesn't have those policies in place, that might be something to consider. So for example, if you're a flower vendor and you come into a market and there's already 5 flower vendors there, you might not do very well at that market. Maybe people already have established relationships with the other vendors. And it might be harder to also build those relationships because there's more competition or perceived competition with you coming in. I'm not sure. That's something that each of you kind of has to decide for yourself, but it's certainly worth thinking about how you're actually going to be able to make money at that market if there's a lot of other similar vendors selling the same product. And the customer base. Are the customers at this particular market interested in your products? So this is something that I encourage people to think about, especially artists who are selling really expensive products. So if you're going to a farmer's market, people might not come to that farmer's market planning to spend $200 on a piece of art that day. if you have a piece of art that's really expensive, you might think about, this is a great marketing opportunity for you. This is a great way to get your name out there, and people might not purchase it that day, but maybe it's just a good way to build up the awareness of your product as well. But if, you know, you're going there every week and you're noticing that there's not a lot of interest in your particular product, it just might not be the right space for you. And you might need to find a different market that works a little bit better and has customers that are more interested in what you're selling. This is just an example of a vendor application, basic information. You're going to get these slides after, so I'm going to skip through this one pretty quick, as well as a few links here. Folks were wondering where to find markets in Manitoba. This is one spot where you can find markets in Manitoba. It's the Direct Farm Manitoba website, and they have a map with the markets that are part of their cooperative on there. So that has a list, but I was also curious to crowdsource and hear a little bit about in your community, how would if you know of places to find out about markets happening, how you would do that. Are there community bulletin boards? Is it the radio? Is it Facebook? Are there Facebook groups? And feel free to either unmute or just share it in the chat so people can get a few ideas of how to find markets in their area. So Melissa says, go to Cheryl. So if you live in the Paw and the surrounding area, Cheryl will know. And she's saying social media, posters, radio, newspaper, be friends with artists, because then they invite you personally to their markets. Mini music festivals. Yeah, there's totally markets at a lot of music festivals. That's true. Yeah, and I don't know, Cheryl, if you're accepting friend requests on Facebook, but I think you share a lot of things like that too. So Chamber of Commerce, Imagine Northern, awesome. That's great. So I'll just hi Cheryl. Yeah. I'll just go through now, like, what are a few first steps that you might want to think about before you vend at a market? And these are kind of the more businessy things to think about. For example, what's going to be your business structure? So is this a full-time business? Is it part-time, a hobby? Is it on the side? How much money do you need to make? How much time do you want it to consume? And is it going to be a legal corporation or a sole proprietorship? And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more here. So a for-profit business is a business that is legally incorporated with the intention to make profit and sell goods and services. It includes various forms such as a sole proprietorship, so it's just you, general partnership, limited partnership, etc. We're not going to be able to get into all these things in this workshop today, but I did offer a link there with more information, and I have a link at the end of our slideshow too to a few other resources if you're really interested in diving into the different options that your business might take, including Community Futures has a Build a Better Business website, and they talk about all those things in there, and that's a free resource, a free training resource, and there's a whole bunch of other ones as well that you can check out. A cooperative would be another option if you're going in with kind of a group or a collective of people. Cooperatives can be for-profit or not-for-profit, and in Manitoba they're made up of 3 or more people. Whoops, I skipped right to the end. Sorry, everyone. Oh my goodness. I accidentally clicked the link now. Okay. Oh yes, for Indigenous women in the North, Community Futures North Central offers an Indigenous women's entrepreneurship program. Thanks so much. That's great. Yeah, the next step is to choose your product. I think this is probably the easiest and most fun step for people. You already know what you're good at. Maybe if you're good at a lot of different things, then this might be a harder step for you, but It's pretty straightforward. Then pricing your product is the next step. Your product is unique, so you got to make sure that your price reflects that. Like, it is so special to you. You're the only one who can make that product in that particular way. And you probably want to make sure that you're at least breaking even, so that you're not losing money on your product. And we'll talk about that in a bit. Or if you are wanting to make profit, if that's your goal, then you want to price accordingly to that goal. So we're going to chat a little bit about the different ways, the different strategies that you might consider when you're pricing your product. So one could be to maximize your product, position your product, encourage a customer trial, which I think this photo is actually a really great example. So this is at the farmer's market. This person brought these like handmade chessboards out for people to use, and then put their information on it with a price, but people could just play it at the market. And that's a great way to kind of encourage a customer trial and get people to engage with your product and maybe create a bit of an emotional relationship with your product too. Your goal might just be to break even. So if it's just a fun hobby, then it's like, I just don't want to lose money on this. Or you might want to be competitive. And you might choose to combine a number of these different strategies. So this is kind of like a more technical part of the workshop. We're going to talk about pricing strategies, and then we're really going to go into how you price your product. And I'm going to use the example of a food, like a baking product. And then I also am going to provide you with a link to some handouts and materials after the workshop is over that has an Excel spreadsheet that you can use to price your product as well. And then I also have a resource from Manitoba Agriculture that goes into some of these things in even more detail if you really want to learn more and you feel like you just need a little bit of extra information. And I'll say thanks to Cheryl for passing along that resource. So if maximizing profit is your goal of pricing your product, then you need to charge what the customer will bear. So this is like the highest price that someone would possibly pay. And this requires a little bit of experimentation. So you start with pricing pretty high, what you think the market can bear, and then you lower it as needed by offering free, or you could offer feature prices. So like sales, that sort of thing, buy one, get one half off. So you'd set an initial price, you do a feature price, lower it to see if that's what the market can bear as a lower price, and then you just increase it again, and you're kind of experimenting and moving back and forth. And success too in this instance would depend on your marketing. Product positioning. So this is to consider how your product is displayed. That will have an effect on sales. If you want to sell your product at a feature price, it should be placed at the center of the table or up a little bit higher in your eye level so the customer can see it easily. And something to consider is that customers may associate a higher price with better quality. So if you're featuring a product at a higher price, you put it in the center, you're kind of like, this is my prized product. So if you're selling a bunch of art and there's like one really big piece that you've spent a lot of time on, and it's really eye-catching, that's what you're going to put higher up at eye level and in the middle of your display. Encouraging a customer trial. So how do you get people to try your product? You can do sampling, and we'll chat a bit about sampling later. For artists, this could be free stickers, bookmarks, or other giveaways. And like I said, you could put furniture, tables, or games out on display for use as well. Some people are just in it for the fun, for community service as a gift. And I think that's a totally great way to engage at a farmer's market as well. So if this is you, you just want to make sure that you aren't, you're charging the bare minimum price, so that you aren't losing money from your inputs and your labor. So you can still price the cost of your labor into a break-even strategy if you want, but you don't have to. So you could say, I'm volunteering my labor, but I just want to recover the cost of the ingredients for a product or that type of thing. But you could also have a strategy, a break-even strategy, where you say, I want to get paid $10 an hour, $20 an hour, and then I'm going to price according to that. Yeah. your competitors are going to have different pricing objectives and strategies than you. So you don't necessarily want to follow their pricing exactly, but it is good to know what they're charging, especially if you have a product that's pretty much the same. So like if you're selling zucchini, for example, or you're selling beaded earrings, it's really good to know what someone else is charging, so you're not so much higher or so much lower than them. And if you are so much higher or so much lower, then you probably want to have a reason so that if someone asks, you can kind of say, you know, well, I use this particular type of rare bead, or this is like, I smoked this hide myself, or yeah, I traveled very far and that's why my zucchini is organic or pesticide free or something like that. So just kind of know why your product is quite a bit more than someone else. And another thing you could do too, which I have seen vendors do before, is if you are friendly with another vendor who's selling a similar product as you that's priced so much different, you could ask them, be like, hey, how did you think about your pricing? Like what went into that decision? You know, would you be interested in aligning our prices to be a little bit closer? I'm nervous about bringing my price down a lot. Like, would you consider bringing your price up a little bit? And if you feel like there's room for a friendly conversation like that, I've definitely seen that work before. So how do you actually put a value, like a price number, on whatever it is that you're making or growing? Some of you might know this term already. I apologize if it's repetitive, but it is an important consideration when you're costing out your products, which is the cost of goods sold. So this is the total cost of making your product. So it's the cost of the raw materials, the packaging, the manufacturing, the freight or the shipping charges. So for example, this could be your seed costs, this could be your paint costs, or your canvas, this could be your water, your fertilizer, your fuel, your fabric. Anything that you need to pay for to bring that product to the market should be going into your cost of goods sold. And then your cost of your labor and time is actually included in the cost of goods sold as well. So you get to decide what you pay yourself when you're working for yourself. And sadly, many of us pay ourselves too little, and that's sometimes just the reality of having a passion project. But you know, I'd encourage you to experiment with that and track your admin work, your marketing, etc. There's 6 steps here to calculating what your final product cost might be and trying to figure out how much you're actually paying for a single product. So this is like if you're making a cookie, for example. So again, this is an Excel sheet that I'm going to give you a link to afterwards. Yeah, sometimes paying oneself is impossible. I costed out a pair of socks including labor and they were over $400. Totally. Yeah, so you need to figure out what makes the most sense and works the best for you and your particular situation. So the first thing would be to standardize your product's measurements. So in a recipe, convert everything into cups. So lots of recipes have teaspoons and tablespoons. So start by just standardizing everything. And if you're doing a piece of art or fabric, you'll have to find your own special way to standardize the units. Once it's in cups, you'd convert it to grams. So this is the way that you purchase most ingredients. So like if you purchase a big thing of flour, it's going to be like 5,000 grams. So this is just the standard unit of measurement for most bulk purchasing is in grams. So that's why we encourage you to convert everything over from cups to grams. Then you would record the purchase price of everything. So for example, this flour costs $10 for 5 kilograms. Chocolate chips are $8.99 for 1 kilogram. Then you convert the purchase amount into grams. So I know this is like a bit confusing to kind of verbalize. I'm sorry. It's one of those things that you kind of have to do. And I am going to give you the Excel sheet. And if anyone has any questions after the workshop where it's feeling confusing, I'm happy to jump on a call and kind of sort out those more specific details in your specific situation with you. It's just really hard to go over quickly in a workshop this short. So I'm trying to do a quick overview. So this is where you'd have your base price and your quantity in grams, and you divide your base price at $10 divided by total grams. So 5 kilograms is 5,000 grams. And the cost per gram is then, you know, $0.002. It's not very much, but you'll be timesing it by however many portions you're making. So the original recipe is noted here in grams in this first column on the left. But then, you know, if you are making 12 times that recipe for the farmer's market that day, then you're gonna times it by 12. And then that's where you get to this final step where you're taking your base price, the cost per gram, and you're timesing it by 12 to figure out how much your total cost is for a batch of 12. So those are your inputs. That's the cost of your inputs. But you're still going to have costs like your packaging and those sorts of things. But that'll be easier because you'll know what the price is per unit a little bit easier, and you just add that to that amount. So, you know, at $31.82, you divide that by 12 and you get your cost per cookie there. So the final cost would be, what is that, 12? I didn't include that, $2.65. So you want to make sure that you're pricing whatever you're making above $2.65 to cover all of your costs. So there's a spreadsheet here as an example that you'll get at the end of the workshop. I just want to pause there. That's like a very quick overview of a kind of complicated thing. Does anyone have any questions about that before we keep moving along about trying to figure out what your input costs are for each product? Okay, it's great. Awesome. I'm glad that was helpful. It can be challenging going through it so fast. Okay, so that's your cost of goods sold. You have your input costs, your cost of labor if you choose to pay yourself, which I would encourage you to try if it's possible. And to remember that, yes, these are labors of love often. But then you have your operating expenses as well. So these aren't directly related to a specific product, but rather kind of the process of making and selling your product. So this might include the facility rental, the table rental, advertising or website fees if you have a website, your bank transaction fees, those sorts of things. So when you're pricing your product, you want to make sure, of course, we just talked about that your cost of goods sold is lower than your selling price. So if your cost of goods sold is $2.65, you want to make sure that you're, you know, and I just rounded it up here to $3, that your selling price is higher. So for example, you might say $5 is my selling price. All of the inputs are $3, so I would make a $2 profit. But then you're thinking about, you know, these operating costs as well. So maybe your fixed costs or your operating costs are $1. And so then you have $1 left over to pay yourself. Or to keep for growing your business down the road. I'll just check in one more time before we move on from pricing. Does anyone have any more questions about pricing? No? Cool. So another thing to think about when you are going to a farmer's market is who's your target market? Who do you want to sell to? Who do you think is most likely to buy your product? For example, it might be people in the age category of 40 to 70 years old. It might be someone who makes between $30,000 to $50,000 a year. This is a really big, broad category. So you might need to break it down a little bit more specifically if you want to customize your marketing efforts. Oops, the photo isn't showing up here. So your target customer is the type of person that you think is most likely to purchase your products. This is a much smaller portion of your target market. You would identify or imagine certain aspects of who this person is. They might be a specific age instead of a range, and they might be a specific income level versus different types of income levels. So maybe your strategy is actually just to have the most affordable produce for people who just need food. And so your target market is people who have an income level of $30,000 and less, or $25,000 and less. There's so many different ways to think about that and to think about your marketing accordingly. So I'm just going to switch screens here because I wanted to do a quick exercise that requires us to be able to see this picture. So can everyone see this picture of the keychains here? Yeah, okay. So who do you think might be a target customer for these keychains? What are some characteristics of someone you think would buy something like this? Feel free to put it in the chat, or if you prefer, you could unmute also. Animal lovers, yeah. Animal owners, animal lovers, parents for latchkey kids, animal lovers, yeah, totally. Dog mamas. So when you're selling to people who are animal lovers or owners, you know, if the farmer's market has dogs allowed, you might be especially enthusiastic to greet people with dogs. One other way that you might welcome them in is you put out a little water bowl for dogs in your tent, right? And then that's encouraging people to come and visit your booth and chat with you. And their dogs are coming there, they see the water and they're kind of forced to come and say hello, or maybe you have some dog treats, something to engage with that particular target market in a creative way and a thoughtful way. Custom orders, yeah. Friends who have pets. Yeah. So if it's something where you might take custom orders to say, like, I would, you know, etch your pet into a photo like this, putting up a sign to say that is great. Or maybe you have a picture of you and your pet as part of your marketing strategy, and you say, like, I'm a dog owner too, I'm a dog lover too, or a pet owner, and this is kind of one of the reasons why I became so passionate about this hobby. Lots of different ways to connect with your customers there. Okay, I am switching again. Apologies, it's just my internet sometimes. This is my preference, sharing in this way. Okay. So we're going to talk about food safety and permits. And again, this is going to be a little bit repetitive for those who have attended the last workshop, but there are a few additional things more catered to vendors. So it's important to start off with acknowledging that Indigenous food practices were excluded, as most of the world's food practices were modernized and commercialized, and not always for the better. And if this is something that you don't know too much about, I'd really encourage you to check out this link. The History of Food in Canada is the history of colonialism. Indigenous food practices, yeah, were excluded from a lot of these permitting processes and not even considered. And not only that, but they were also used as a tool for oppression. So I think it's important to kind of say that and acknowledge it before we go into any of this, because it's part of the history of these permits and this regulation process. So this information comes from the Northern Manitoba Food Community and Culture Collaborative, which Cheryl works for if you're curious to know more. And in this document, they say there's limited documentation on Indigenous food preparation techniques such as fermentation, smoking, drying, or consumption practices. And like traditional wildlife harvesting and management, traditional food safety and preservation methods are not always being acknowledged by the federal provincial policies in Canada. And I would say too that it's a combination sort of a lack of willpower and some intentionality there as well, unfortunately. In Canada, all meat and fish produced and harvested for commercial purposes and public consumption are subject to regulations. So essentially, this means that you cannot sell wild meats and foods. You can only give them away, and technically, you're only able to give them away to your family members and your community members. It's really important. Asfia, who wrote this article, who is a professor at University College of the North in Thompson, reminds us to use our WISE practice, though, and to develop our own WISE practice based on our own direct experiences. So I'm kind of saying these things to encourage reflection and think about our own experiences and say what has and hasn't worked for us, and what has and hasn't worked for our community too, and what information do we need to know to make things work better for us, or to address issues that we've had. So I don't want to tell you how to do it. In fact, I'm like incredibly opposed to telling you how to do it because you know how to do it best. I really strongly believe that. I'm happy to share information based on my experiences and the things that have worked for me, but that's just what has worked for me. So you will develop your own WISE practice based on your experiences and what works for you. And we're working within these systems, so it can be helpful to know what those systems are. Yeah. This is basically just saying what I just said, where country foods, because they aren't inspected, you can't serve them in public places at schools and restaurants and farmers markets, is why I included that in here. Okay, so all markets must be approved by and receive an operating permit from a provincial public health inspector before opening. And I've linked to the farmers market guidelines here, and we're going to go over them in more detail. There is one exception to this. So these farmers market guidelines, as far as the information that I've been given, which is limited, and I don't have direct experience in this area, so I definitely would welcome anyone to share if they do have more information about this, is that these guidelines apply to off reserve only. So Food and Beverage Manitoba did a bit of research for me, and their research showed that on reserve, each community kind of has their own application and permitting process. So some may have an internal approval process with chief and council or their health department, while some may choose to involve the environment of public health officers from First Nations or the Inuit Health Branch. So it kind of sounds like you just need to know your community and know what their process is and ask about it. Because they might have their own kind of specific permit and process. That could easily change. Sabrina, do you want to elaborate on that? Are you suggesting that it might change so that it's more federally regulated, or that each community's individual process is changing on a regular basis? I'll just jump to the next slide, but feel free. Right. Yeah. Okay. So you're also saying that it could be overturned. The country food regulations could be overturned because technically it's an infringement on Indigenous food sovereignty. Is that just, yeah. Permits overruled for Treaty 1 band members. I'm trying to for all Treaty 1 signatory heirs. So signatory heirs would not necessarily always be in need of permits. Awesome. Okay, cool. Yeah, and there is so much to be said about Indigenous food sovereignty and how the permitting process is infringing on and prohibiting Indigenous food sovereignty in a lot of different ways. So yeah, it would be lovely to see that changed for sure. I mean, lovely is not even like a strong enough word. It's important that that is changed. It's critical. So the farmers market guidelines are meant to prevent the spread of foodborne illness. They are a guideline for markets, and the public health inspectors may require additional information outside of these guidelines. It can be a helpful guide, whether you're on reserve or not. So if you go to your community and they have a particular permitting process and you say, I know the provincial process, and this is kind of what I'm doing, what I'm following, I would imagine that that would be sufficient, but I cannot say for sure. Each farmer's market, if they're going through the permitting process, will have to get a market permit. When the market coordinator goes through that process of getting a permit, they're going to ask you for some information that they need to put on their permit application. So they're going to need your vendor information. That's like your name, your business name, your contact information. And they'll actually need, if you're selling a food product, then they'll need information about every one of your products. So they'll want to list like cinnamon buns, bread, cookies, they'll require that list. If you need a permit to sell your product, they will need a copy of that permit. So that's in the case of if you are doing some sampling, which we'll talk about, you may need a permit. But also if you are selling meat or potentially hazardous food item, you may also need a permit. So definitely if you're selling meat, you'll need a meat hawker's permit. And there's a few other instances where permits might be needed. Then you would submit them to your market coordinator and they'd submit them to the public health inspector on your behalf. And the public health inspector, if they need more information, may follow up with you directly, or they may just ask the market coordinator to ask you the questions, and that person kind of acts as the in-between. So this is what I think it's definitely important to know about the farmers market guidelines, because they are a pretty information heavy document. And again, this is mostly for people who are doing food-based items. So for food safety, food, some of these things are just really obvious, like they shouldn't have toxic substances or dirt or anything like that in them. Canned food should not be sold unless they are jam, sauces, or pickles, and they have to have a particular acidity. One thing that's important to know is that you can never sell wild mushrooms or ungraded eggs in Manitoba, or uninspected meats at a farmer's market legally that has a permit. And then also potentially hazardous food must be prepared in an inspected food facility. So this is kind of the definition of hazardous versus non-hazardous food. Oh, Denise. Okay, which part of that will be changing? Do you want to elaborate? Denise is from Food and Beverage,
Yeah.
so I'm happy. Yeah.
So Manitoba Agriculture has just informed me that in the future, graded eggs, you might be able to sell ungraded eggs at the market.
Okay.
So this is being looked at right now.
Awesome.
But not meat, but eggs.
Okay. That's great news, because I know there's been a lot of lobbying around that for quite a while, and it's different in other provinces. It's incredibly expensive to grade eggs, and the egg grading process, if you're curious, basically just means that you're washing them and you're making sure that they're all the same size. So yeah, and then they get inspected by a health inspector, and there's a lot of expensive infrastructure that you need to do that process. So that's great news. I'm happy to hear that. A non-potentially hazardous food product, we'll go over a list of what these are, is something that you can make at home. You can only sell it at the farmer's market. Something that is deemed potentially hazardous by the province cannot be sold at a farmer's market unless you prepare it in an approved food handling establishment and follow all the other guidelines. So this is like a commercial kitchen or something like that. This is kind of a list that they give as an example in the farmers market guidelines of non-potentially hazardous foods. And generally they are baking. Potentially hazardous foods is a lot of different things, including baking, anything with meat, anything that's fermented, anything with dairy, if it's not baked into something. So then you need to prepare it in a commercial kitchen. You need to do some food protection and packaging. So I'm not going to go through all of this, but basically you need to have a tent legally at the farmer's market, because that protects your product from anything above that might fall on it. Containers have to be stored 6 inches off the ground. This doesn't apply to vegetables. There's some refrigeration temperatures that you should be aware of. Packaged foods can't be in direct contact with water or undrained ice. And a health inspector might ask for a thermometer if they come to the market, but they also might not come to the market. This is an example of sort of packaging options for you. You can have packaging to go and have everything kind of in a nice container or display like this. You could even just have it in like a big cupcake or cookie container, like just a Tupperware container. It doesn't have to be nicely displayed, but that might impact your sales. If people can see it, they might be more likely to buy it. They think, yum, that looks so good, I want to eat it. And then you would kind of take tongs or a glove to put it into that packaging. Labeling is the next step. These are the things that you would need on a food label. So you need your vendor name, the contact information, the common name of the food, like cinnamon buns. You need a full ingredient list on your labels and the date that the food was prepared. In sort of the previous example, you see that things aren't individually packaged. If that's the case, then you just need to have that information on hand. So if someone asks to take it away with them, then they can do that. So this could be on like little sheets of paper that you cut out, or you can just write it down, but you just need to make sure that information is with you at your booth and that they can take it away if they want, the customer. So this is an example of a label with all of that information. Sampling. If you want to do samples, keep things clean. It's a good idea to bring an extra like tong or like utensil in case one gets dirty, and bring extra ice packs on hot days if you need ice packs for your sampling. Non-perishables need to be stored in covered containers. Everything must be pre-cut away from wherever you're serving customers. So you can't cut things like right at the table that you're serving. So you need to set up another table behind you or do it ahead of time. Samples of potentially hazardous foods, again, need to be in a commercial kitchen. There's a bunch of other stuff here. I don't know that anyone today has a food product that they've talked about. So you can look at this more on your own time if you'd like, to see what's needed if you're doing sampling at a farmer's market. So the last thing here kind of that I think is important to know is just to know your community. So do you have a local health inspector? Do you have a relationship with them? Are there licensed kitchens or food handling establishments that could be used for vendors? And work with the market coordinator and local businesses such as Community Futures to support you. So they'll have information that you need to hopefully find a kitchen and find the resources. So what about retail and online sales? Technically speaking, your farmer's market permit or the farmer's market permit that is received by the market coordinator is what allows you to sell at a farmer's market. When that kind of acts as your permit too. So when you're selling retail or online, you don't have a permit, especially if you're selling potentially hazardous food product. So that's something to be aware of. You're not really supposed to, but again, I know there's really strong country food markets in some communities, and I encourage people to use their own wise practice and to know their community and what's kind of acceptable for you. I'm just sharing what is legal, which technically, if you're not selling at a farmer's market, it's not legal to sell a product made at home. Does anyone have any questions about the farmers market guidelines before I move on to marketing, promotions, and customer relationships?
I'm Heather, hi, sorry, hang on.
Hi.
I'll put my video open, hang on. Hi.
Hey, Heather.
Hi. I was wondering, I was in the breakout room with a couple people there. Sorry, I took over sort of that group in there too. I was talking about garlic. And
Yeah.
so normally I just give my garlic away to people that help me.
Yeah.
One of my helpers is here. Hi. She knows who she is. Anyway, so yeah, so I was wondering about like sort of like the processing of things. Like I know you went pretty fast through that one slide about like the certain things that needed permits.
Yeah.
Maybe I can talk to you privately another time about it, but so processing the garlic, like I know there's some people that sell garlic on the side of the road. I know there's some people that sell at farmers markets. I haven't sold any at a farmer's market. I just trade it for people that help me. But if in the future I want to do like say garlic escape powder or things like that, whether I would need a commercial kitchen for that, or those are kind of my questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are great questions. I don't think garlic powder isn't on either list. So I don't know. You'd have to talk to a health inspector or Manitoba Agriculture to see what they say, unless Denise, you know offhand whether garlic is noted as a potentially hazardous food product or not.
Yeah, she didn't quite know offhand. She was in the
Well,
breakout
okay.
room with me, but maybe I
Garlic,
can talk to her.
it's associated with hazards. It's got,
Right.
it's associated with Clostridium botulinum outbreaks. So it depends on the type of product in that, but I don't know if it would be required to work in a kitchen, but I would highly recommend it, especially if you're canning it or anything like that.
Yeah.
You definitely need to acidify it, and then with Clostridium, the dangers is it can grow at refrigeration temperatures, and it's a spore, so it's very heat resistant. So you have to make sure you're meeting temperature requirements in that. But at the same time, if it's pickled, then you're acidifying it. So
Yeah.
I have to look at it more closely. Every
Okay.
product is kind of,
Right.
you have to look at it individually, and there's so many products out there that and it also depends on the type of spices you'd be adding to it as well. If you add any additional spices, that can also be a source of contamination. So we'd have to look at the whole product as a, as a whole. So but
Yeah.
it is actually a high potential hazard, garlic. It's one of those products that people forget. There's been a lot of outbreaks with oil and garlic past. People got very, very sick because people were adding garlic to oil, and it's able to survive. The spores can grow in that condition. So yeah, it's definitely one of those that has to be looked at.
Awesome. Denise, could you just
Right.
pop your email address into the chat, and maybe you and Heather can follow up more. I know dehydrating garlic is something that lots of people do. It might be worth just reaching out to, if you've seen other vendors or people online who dehydrate garlic, asking them what their permitting process is. That's something that I kind of like to do sometimes, is just often vendors are really interested in sharing that information with each other. So Real Garlic is who I get my garlic from, REAL. And they're on Facebook and they do garlic powder. So you could ask them what their process is. Maybe that could be another
Yeah,
option.
cool. Yeah, thank you. Because I've only seen one. I've bought some garlic escape powder, but that was like in passing on my way to a thing like 6 years ago,
Yeah.
and I don't remember where it was. And
Yeah.
so I've been
Totally.
on the hunt for it. Just ask somebody. Like I just like you mentioned before, just kind of reach out to the people you've seen who has the thing and talk to them. And so I'm about networking, and so yeah, I have no problem doing that. Yeah. For
Awesome.
sure.
Thanks, Heather.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, right on, thanks.
Okay, so we're going to move on to marketing, promotions, and customer relationships. And I have a video here by Trisha from the Birch Tree. It's about a 25-minute video, but she goes over some really, really helpful tips for marketing and customer relationships that I think are really important. I will say the one thing about the video is that her internet was off when it was recorded. So there's a bit of a lag between the video and the audio. But I think it's still, the information is still there. So I'm hopeful that that won't inhibit anyone's learning. And then I also have this, I can share this video afterwards if anyone would like as well. So we're gonna give this a try and see if it works. Again, I'm curious with internet how sharing will be. We'll figure it out. And this was from a workshop originally done by Fireweed Food Co-op and the South Osborne Farmers Market. So here we go. We're going to embark on a 25-minute video together. If anyone is having any technical issues, Annie and I will be monitoring the chat. Just let us know. And then at the end of this video, we will wrap up the workshop by talking about what a day at the market looks like. Here we go. I guess I should have tested the audio on this video too. Share computer sound.
The main thing that you need to know if you're going to market, the best form of marketing is you. Sometimes marketing can be really overwhelming and like, what is it even?
Can you hear that? I just want to confirm that you heard that before I keep going.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Even, you know, there's many, many different components to it, but ultimately when you're in a face-to-face environment, you are the star. So you have to shine. So the more excited you are about your products and the more effort you put in, the higher the chance you have at success. So kind of always remember that as you go. Some other topics that we're going to be covering are promoting your authenticity in terms of your business, not necessarily your personality, although that does come into play too. Market booth setup, sales and inventory, and product positioning, building a loyal clientele, the big scary integrated marketing communications, and why isn't my amazing product selling? A story by the Birch Tree. And then we'll follow up with a Q&A session if there are components that we haven't quite covered. So I will dive right in. So promoting your business's authenticity. You got to think deep for this one sometimes. So what makes your product authentic? What can you say about your product that no one else can? Is there a niche that you can focus on? So for example, I'll use my Birch Tree seasonings. So we grow our own ingredients and source locally. So in terms of other spice blends, maybe you don't know where those ingredients are coming from. So that would be considered something authentic about my business. Our produce is also spray-free. We avoid most common allergens so that everybody can enjoy. Our products are also low sodium, no sugar, no preservatives or artificial colors or flavors. Some niche markets that I've been focusing on with my business are the vegan and gluten-free community, but also in addition to everyone else that enjoys food, because I mean, if everybody likes to eat, I'd love to feed them all with my seasonings, but I do tailor a lot of my marketing towards businesses put an effort for those groups. So yeah, why not speak to them, right? And lastly, become a storyteller and an expert of your craft. Now we're going to kind of dial it back and go to the actual market booth setup. We'll talk more about marketing after. A couple of tips that I've learned along the way. Avoid setting your table near the edge of the tent. I see this so much at markets where the tent is literally like right on the edge of the tent. If you actually kind of bring it in a little bit, it creates more of an inviting, welcoming environment where customers can kind of come in and visit and be more interactive instead of being kind of on the outside as though they're not really a part of whatever it is you're doing. And then plus, if it's raining, they also have a dry space to hang out and chat. So there's some bonus points for you. A clean, organized, and easy to view product display will result in more sales. The more clutter there is, the more overwhelming it is to a customer, and the less likely they are to buy. I've seen this a lot where just, you know, it's a mess. They're lost. So if you can kind of create a flow of those organized products and have different sections for shopping versus purchasing. So basically you would designate one side of the booth for product displays where people can shop and browse, and aside for payment and packing orders. This will also allow a flow for the next customer to have the opportunity to browse while you're wrapping up with the last customer. So different things to think about for your booth setup. Also, in a farmer's market environment, most markets are outdoors. And sometimes, you know, you're just relying on your tent. As we discussed yesterday, sometimes there are other options, but a lot of the time, commonly, you're in that tent. And sometimes not, but I'd say most food vendors, I think you tent. Air, high winds, be sure your tent, products, and display are secured. Lots of things have been smashed, blown, and broken. It'll happen again, but the more prepared you are, the better. Water, rain. Be prepared to protect your products and yourself from getting wet. Sometimes a sudden storm will roll in even though there was no rain in the forecast, and you need to cover your product. You know, whatever it is that you're doing, just be very prepared. Heat. But yeah, dress accordingly. Hot tip, pack a frozen water bottle in a cooler and use it on yourself to cool yourself down. I do this at markets and it is amazing. So definitely give that a try. And I used earth for mud. So be sure to have storage for your products and display so they don't get muddy, especially kind of during setup when you're transporting. And next for the booth setup, the office. So can everybody still hear me?
Yes.
I think so. Okay, good. Just making sure. So I love to create a portable office in a small bin with a lid with all of my market essentials. That way everything's just really accessible and organized when I need them the most. So I usually keep paper, pens, Sharpie, tape, my square reader, business cards, and other printed promotional material. So I have price lists that I give out. Sometimes people want to include it with like a gift or whatever. So it's just all there. A small measuring tape, oddly enough, yourself or another vendor may need a measuring tape. So it's not a bad thing to have on hand. Calculator, if you're giving change and you kind of need to run those transactions on the fly. Rubber gloves and other sampling tools, making sure that everything's clean, of course, you don't reuse them. Hand sanitizer and extra masks. An emergency poncho for that rain, definitely a plus. And your float, usually in a cloth zippered bag or a small cash box. I've also put a tip, never leave unattended. Farmers markets seem like really friendly places, but people still have been robbed. So just protect your money. And then a printed inventory list as well. So we're going to talk more about that. And also on my booth, personally, I like to tape my inventory list just kind of near the back of the booth out of the customer's view as much as possible. That way it's just there for me to mark down my sales as I go. I'll talk more about that in the coming slides. So the sales and inventory sheet, it's really great to build an itemized list of your products in alphabetical order so you can quickly reference them. Create a column for your opening and closing inventory. Create columns for each market date so that way you can easily reference the sales data. And yeah, as sales occur, mark them down, just little tick marks, you know, in like the fives, kind of 1, 2, 3 kind of thing. This can also be done with your Square account if you are taking, you know, card payments. But Oftentimes I find manual to be preferable. It's right there. I don't have to worry about, you know, my data being down or something like that. So it's just nice. And it's better for referencing multiple markets all in just one clean sweep as well. Prior to the market, count and record your opening inventory. And after the market, count and record your closing inventory and revise your sales recording as necessary. Not everybody does this, but I do find that it is very good information to have. And then you can use that data to compare which items are selling versus which items are not, and kind of adjust your plans from there. Product positioning. Is there a specific product that you want to focus on? Ensure that it's positioned as the first item that customers see. So typically, you know, I usually kind of go with the way that we read in this culture from left to right. So then if I really want to sell my salsa today, I'm going to be positioning it first and foremost. That way everyone can clearly see it first. Is it possible to sample that product today? Food in the mouth is a sure sell. Anytime I've ever sampled a product, that's what sells the most that day. So if you're planning on selling your salsa up to the holidays, make that your sample product, because that's going to move it. And then play with the order of your products and monitor if they sell differently based on their position. So I often rearrange my products each different market and kind of see if that makes a difference, where the customer's eyes go and that sort of thing. And it's actually quite interesting from a consumer behaviors perspective. This does affect sales. So definitely play with that and monitor your findings. Building a loyal clientele. Pardon me, I just need some water. Hold yourself and your products to high standards. So you should make sure that your products are always consistent. And that's through accurately recording your processes, which is something we spoke about yesterday. Your packaging, labeling are clean, crisp, and consistent. The label should always be in the same spot every time. I've seen some sellers where, you know, sometimes the label's up here and then it's down there, then it's down there. And it's not as orderly. You know, you want to define your brand as something that's just clear and concise. So positioning of that label is important. Based products in the past, and later you kind of notice, oh, there's some like black fingerprints and there's a hair. These things, so nice and clean. So for the growers out there, like if I'm doing garden work, I'm, you know, dirty hands. I'm not going to go and label something right away without cleaning up my workstation. Oh, my internet connection is unstable, it says. Is everybody doing okay?
I can still hear and see you fine, so we're good.
Oh, that's good.
Yes.
Okay, just got a little note there. And then also, if your product comes with any instructions, make sure they're simple and easy to follow. Because, you know, if all of these things are nice and orderly and easy for the customer, they're likely to buy again, as opposed to being confused with the instructions and, oh, I found like this gross thing. So yeah. And always say thank you. That's one thing that I notice in today's society, that sometimes people don't say thank you. It drives me nuts, absolutely nuts. So every time someone makes a purchase, smile, say thank you, always make eye contact when you're engaging with the customers. Be prepared to answer questions customers may have about your product. So this will happen time and time again. And like we were talking about earlier, becoming a product expert at your craft definitely will go a long way. And if I don't know the answer, I'll also write it down and then I'll find out later. That way I know that answer for next time. Here's a fun one. Share fun facts that are relatable to your products. I do have an example, and I am going to stop sharing my screen for a second so you can see me clearly. I don't know if I actually need to do that or not, but I will. So I'm a vegetable producer, let's say, and one of the products I sell are bell peppers that I grow. So, you know, a fun fact could be how to tell the gender of a bell pepper. Does anybody know? I'm going to say that's probably
No, I don't. the bumps on the bottom, right? I think it's like 3, 3, and 4 between the two. It's like 3's male, 4's female, something like that.
Exactly. So I have some peppers here for the visual. So I have a yellow pepper and a red pepper. One's a boy and one's a girl. So the male has 1, 2, 3 lobes on the bottom, whereas the female pepper has 1, 2, 3, 4 lobes on the bottom. Of course, we need to relate back to the point. Otherwise, it's just like, okay, why is this person talking about the gender of a pepper? But, you know, someone's shopping for peppers and you're just sharing these fun facts, chit-chatting at the market. So then bring it back to the point. I like using the male peppers for slicing and grilling. They're easier to work with. They have less seeds. So that's why I like to grill with them. The female peppers are really great for stuffing because of those 4 lobes. They sit nice and flat. So if I'm going to do a stuffed pepper, I'm going to do a female pepper if possible. That way it's not kind of flopping. Female peppers are also a little bit sweeter in flavor. So if that's something that matters to you as well, you can kind of shop accordingly there. So yeah, that's just like sharing a fun fact with, you know, something that it is that you're doing, and then always relating it back to the point. That way it's just like, why is this person rambling? Go back to my presentation here. Okay, there we go. And everybody can see that again? Awesome. And other ways to kind of build that loyal clientele, follow up with customers who bought the last time. It might not mean that they're buying this time, but if you see them at the market, just say, oh, hey, how's it going? How did you like that garlic last time? And, you know, just how did they enjoy the product? How did they use it? Get their feedback, you know, just kind of involve them in your whole entire process. You can tell them about, you know, upcoming ideas that you have for different products that will be available, and kind of get them excited about that next time they may be buying. And also indirect conversation can also lead to future sales. Just sometimes people buy from you because you're just friendly, chatty, that sort of thing. I mean, especially if you're in a competitive market, like vegetable producers, there's a lot of them. So, I mean, you know, why am I buying from you when I can buy from like the people over there who are like always super nice and funny every time I go over there? So, you know, give a compliment, ask them about their the customer purchased. I really like doing this with customers. If they're carrying something in their hands, like, oh, where did you get that? Which vendor is that from? And just kind of learn more about that type of thing as well. And also helping a customer in need is really nice. Hold a door or direct them to another vendor. Often people will come looking for product A, but you sell product B. Well, actually product A is just over there. It's just really nice to kind of build that sense of community and make it a friendly place. The more enthusiastic you are about your products, the greater the outcome. It will feed off on the customers. So again, you are your best marketing tool. Okay, where are we for time here? Oh, we're doing pretty good. Integrated marketing communications. I would have loved to talk about this a little bit more in depth, but I just kind of gave a brief overview. We can save the rest of, like, if you have questions, save it for the Q&A that will be coming up shortly. So integrated communications is simply relaying the same message across all streams used to advertise your business. So product displays and signage while you're at the market, product sampling should align kind of with that focus, social media, website, whatever it is you're doing. Having a main focus will help drive sales of a specific product. Ensure any images or videos have a consistent look and feel when you are kind of deriving your focus in a specific direction. For today's example, I used microgreens, kind of modified a little bit according to kind of you guys that were gave me your examples of what you're trying to bring to market. So today this month, we're selling Swiss chard microgreens during the month of July. This is your main focus. This is what you'll be excitedly talking about. It may be what you're sampling, displaying as the first thing customers see, and promoting on your digital platform. Speaking of media, I know it's kind of biggest hurdle when it comes to marketing your business. And it's something that can come kind of secondary after you kind of get going, because once you start it, you kind of have to be on top of it all the time, in terms of answering messages and, you know, being consistent with posting somewhat regularly. I don't, it's hard to do, but anyways, back to the point. Take enticing photos and or videos, post them and inform your followers that Swiss chard microgreens will be available all July long. Publicly invite your followers to the market and let them know there will be sampling if applicable. And then even like take photos of, you know, that sample, like say you're doing like a, I don't know, like a fancy cracker topped with microgreens or something. So then, you know, if you show people what they're going to be getting, they're likely to come and visit. So, and don't forget to tag them so they can cross promote, because they have a whole different kind of slew of followers. So, I mean, we can all kind of work together to kind of bring in the community. Using them, does everybody know what hashtags are? Okay, so using a mix of popular, niche, and unique hashtags can kind of bring us a little bit of success as well. So for this example, popular would be microgreens. So that's very general, that could be at an international level. But I mean, people who are into microgreens are probably following that hashtag. So then a niche hashtag would be Winnipeg microgreens. So there's only people basically that produce microgreens in Winnipeg that are using this. But if anybody who really likes microgreens and wants to source them in Winnipeg, maybe they're following that hashtag too. And unique hashtag, my company microgreens. So your company name, microgreens. So that may not have a lot of follows just yet, but if you want to kind of keep consistent and create your own unique hashtag, that can always be really fun to reference later, especially if you're asking your followers to tag your account and use the hashtag my company microgreens with their meal creations. Then it's just something to kind of engage the customers a little bit more. So that's quite nice. I think I use birch tree inspired for my unique hashtag. I haven't played enough with it to really say that it works or doesn't work, because again, keeping up with social media is very hard. And then, yeah, if your customers do tag you in their meal creations, let's say, share their posts, always ask permission first. The worst is seeing somebody share something that you didn't give them permission. In today's day and age, that is almost going to happen anyways, but I always like to try to make a point of asking permission, and that also just builds respect with that kind of loyal client relationship there too. So always nice to do. Create highlights for customer creations and customer reviews, etc. in your Instagram account. That way, you know, people can kind of just see like, oh, this is what people are doing with microgreens. Oh, that looks kind of fun. I think I might buy some. Always publicly thank followers for attending a market and supporting your business. That's always really important to do, just to show that appreciation kind of beyond the face-to-face interaction. And a hot tip, follow other social accounts that are inspirational or educational. There's one in Winnipeg, I think Sebel Studios. I'm probably saying it wrong, but yeah, that's the nut butter. Remember the name, Courtney?
I have no idea.
I can reference my phone really quickly. I know, what's the nut butter here? At Sebel Studio, and she has her own nut butter business. Forgot about that. Okay, so yeah, she has basically social media training, as well as she does it for our businesses as well. And she's always posting different tips and tricks that you can learn on your own. So like stuff like that will really help you with those barriers when it comes to social media use. I know it's like this big overwhelming thing for a lot of people, and yeah, like that would be a course on its own, really, you know. So definitely give her a follow. I can type that in at some point if I can figure out how. Here's a fun one. Why isn't my amazing product selling? That sucks. When you get excited about something and you're just like, oh, this is the best thing. You're doing your happy dance at home. You can't wait to go to the market. you've had a few markets and this thing just isn't selling. Other products on the shelves are selling. Okay, everything's good, but why not this super amazing thing that I think is great? So sometimes it's about multiple things, and we're never really sure exactly what, but it could be product positioning. You know, is it kind of more shoved in the corner and not really front and center? Is it the last thing people are seeing? So, you know, just move it around, put it first next time. Packaging, labeling, or instructions not clear or represented well. So, I mean, maybe do a hard audit of how all of that looks, and, you know, can I make a nicer label, make this product look more marketable? You know, I mean, I started my products in selling them in like test tubes with homemade labels made out of masking tape, you know, but now like I have these nice printed labels, and, you know, everything just looks so crisp and clean now. So that can make a difference. The product name can also be an issue, right? I mean, maybe it's just not, doesn't have a name that represents it well. So you can change the name anytime you want. Why not? Also change the way you're telling your story. So, I mean, maybe you're just not like giving this product enough credit. Maybe you're not talking about it enough, period. So just change the way you're telling your story. Maybe like there's a different recipe that you can showcase that really accentuates this product. So I've got an example of one of my early seasonings, the Mediterranean seasoning. That was my second product that I made. The first was the Mexican. So I kind of thought like, oh, well, maybe some other part of the world, I'll do a Mediterranean seasoning. So I did it, and, you know, thought it would be great. And I crafted all these ingredients together. It tasted great. And then back to the authenticity aspect, I had also considered, well, how can I make my products more authentic? And then I kind of went crazy and started growing my own ingredients. And I noticed that a lot of the ingredients within the Mediterranean seasoning were actually ingredients that I was growing myself. So, I mean, is it really Mediterranean? Probably not at this point. So then I changed the name to Manitoba Medley. I changed the way I was telling my story, told the world that I was growing all of these ingredients, and this seasoning was so healthy and delicious and flavorful. And next thing you know, Manitoba Medley is one of my top 3 sellers. So really, it's all about storytelling. It's all about just putting that product in front of people, getting excited about it, and just kind of, you know, trying what you can until you get that right formula. Okay, and that leaves us with have a plan and don't stick to it. So again, like we just talked about what wasn't selling, and kind of dove into why and how we can modify that. The farmers market is a perfect grounds to test your products to see if they sell. You don't have to commit to a specific plan. You can adjust every week until you find that winning formula that works for your unique product. And it's so much better in a farmers market environment to be able to do that, because you're not really committing to any contracts. It's just, you're the boss. Like, what do you want to do today? So really take advantage of that. There's a lot of benefit to starting out in a farmer's market. And yeah, well, have fun with it. That's the main thing, right? Again, that enthusiasm really shines through. And monitor all of your adjustments to ensure that you're headed in the right direction until you get that winning formula. Here's my office, by the way.
You're muted, Katie.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna head to the last part of the presentation, which is your day at the market. Thanks everyone for watching that video with me. I know there was a few spots where the audio kind of cut out, but I think it was still really valuable information and great to hear from a vendor what their experiences are. Okay. Here's a few more tips and tricks, but I don't think we have time for that. So I'll just jump to your day at the market. I think it's vendors just have so much fun. I love watching vendors have so much fun. That was one of my favorite parts about coordinating the market and just chatting with them and seeing how they engage with vendors and their product and that sort of thing. Yeah, so I just included a few pictures here. So before the market, you want to make sure you're prepared. A great idea is to do a market tour the week ahead of time. So you kind of, I don't know, I enjoy knowing what I'm getting myself into and just having a bit of a sense of where I'm going, who's going to be there, that type of thing. These are the areas we're going to go over in a bit more detail, what it takes to be packed and ready, your mobile office that Trish also talked about, stock and inventory, and booth setup. I'm going to breeze through the first three and spend a bit more time on booth setup, but you'll get the slides after. So packed and ready. It's really important to give yourself enough time to pack your items. That can make the whole experience a lot stressful and easier for you. It takes a lot more time to pack up than you would think. It can be a bit tricky. You might want to do some practice runs if you have a product that's a little bit more temperature sensitive. Then you might not be able to leave it in a hot car for as long. So these are some things you're going to have to experiment with and get ready to do. Learning to pack for the market can take practice, and make sure if there's anything that's fragile to pack it really well. Your mobile office is a cash box change, your square meter, item list, inventory, pen, paper, etc. Make sure you have water, stacks, any medications that you need, and then just know kind of what you need at the market. Like, is the market going to have the tent and tables for you and the chairs, or do you need to bring your own? Oh, and I would say too, when you're bringing your things to the market, it can be great to have a packing list as well, just to make sure you don't forget anything essential, because it can be really stressful if you forgot something and you don't have enough time to go back and get it, or someone can't bring it to you, and you're really hoping to have that at the market. That can be really disappointing. So having a packing list is also a great idea. Stock and inventory. So it's a great idea to know your inventory. Again, knowing what sells. Did you bring too much? Not enough? That helps you know how much to bring the next week if you want to go back to the market again. So booth design, this can be really helpful. Having an attractive setup, I think, is really what can entice buyers to buy your product. This is what welcomes them in, and you might have an amazing product, but it can be intimidating sometimes to approach someone and see what they're selling and to see if you're going to want to buy it. So these things can encourage people to do it. So how will you set up your table? How will your products be displayed? What is your signage like? And is your pricing information clear? These are kind of the important things to think about. And we'll go through 3 different examples. So one thing that's really important that everyone kind of talks about as being really successful is when you add height and different heights to your booth specifically. So if everything's all just on the table, it's going to take a lot more effort for people to come in really close and having to look really close to see what's there and what you're offering. But if you offer things at different heights, it's more visually appealing and engaging to the eyes. And especially if things are higher and at eye level, the things that are kind of your main product, then people will know right away what you're selling and come in and take a look and want to learn more. So you can add height through a few different ways, and we'll look at some pictures of the different ways people have done it. Another thing that can be really helpful is to keep your booth looking full. If you just have maybe 4 or 5 products, sometimes that works. It really depends on the vendor, but generally speaking, we definitely see a lot of success when people have like kind of a lush and full looking booth. So in this case, this vendor used crates to have more height, and you can see too that they have a bit of a flow, like Trish was talking about, where on the right-hand side there, they have their payment station, and potentially even, the products by their payment station are ones that they're trying to feature because you're coming to pay and maybe you're looking at, another product. There's, yes, a sale sign. I'm not sure if you can see that. And a lot of the crates, there's a few maybe where they're starting to sell out, but a lot of the crates, they're trying to kind of fill them up and make them look nice and full. And then here too, you can see this person has a tablecloth, and they're actually just using a sheet, just a really big sheet that works totally fine too. And they have a branded sign for them, and signs can look all different sorts of ways. In this example, again, you're seeing lots of different heights. They're using boxes here in this instance, just to create more height. And they have their branding and their signage. Their booth looks nice and full. They have their payment station set up. But what they also have here, and this can be really helpful, is their price and product list. So that's noted super clearly, and you know how much each thing costs. So if you're curious about it and you're a bit shy to ask, you don't have to. This is just another example, like if you don't have boxes or crates, you could also stack your product if it's not so fragile, and then you're creating some different heights and visual interest that way. But at minimum, you really just want to get prices and a bit of a sign up. People are going to ask about prices, and it's going to depend on your product, but I've just found that to be really successful both as a shopper and in talking to vendors. Nearly all of the more seasoned vendors will have these signs and these price lists up really clearly for their customers to engage with. So before you leave, make sure you're at home, you're getting ready to go to the market, make sure to read any materials and information that the market coordinator has sent you. Kind of the common method of communication is email. Check your transportation. So is there going to be lots of traffic? Give yourself a bit of extra time. Maybe there's poor weather. Are the road conditions okay? If you're driving along a highway, maybe you're busing. So just double check that the buses aren't late. Before you set up, you'll check in with the market coordinator, ask them where your booth is, you'll load your product, and then it's a good idea, will again totally depend on your market and the market flow and the space, but you might need to move your vehicle and then set up your booth. So to get your vehicle out of the way, because there's often a bit of a traffic jam with the other vendors with loading and unloading. So that's why it can be good sometimes, again, to do your kind of market visit the week before, and you could even do it ahead of time to watch kind of how the setup happens. During the market, you might want to bring a family or friend to support you, offer company and an extra hand or moral support. It's a great idea to talk to the other vendors during the market, just again, to build community, to learn from them, to get advice, just to create a welcoming and a friendly environment, and engage with customers. You could be welcoming, but not too pushy, invite people to say hello, browse if they would like to, say that you're available to answer any questions. So you can say, you know, you're welcome to take a look, or yeah, just be inviting but not pushy. During the market, you know, it's always very friendly if you're smiling, making eye contact, offering help if people need it, and greeting the people that come by your booth. This is kind of the inventory check. You can also reflect on how your day went, who your customers were. Do you want to switch up your marketing? All of these sorts of things. And then you can start planning for your next market. I think this is I don't know, I like this. Beyond food, beyond crafts, beyond selling your art, can you build a small community and create a culture? So ultimately, I think, you know, it's important to sell and do well if that, you know, if that's important to you and part of your strategy and reason for being at the market. But ultimately, you're going to want to be at the market if there's a community, a feeling of community, and a culture there that you enjoy being a part of. And yeah, I really want to say thank you to Fireweed Food Co-op and the South Osborne Farmers Market and everyone I've worked with along the way. There's been so many volunteers, and all of those experiences have lended to the information and knowledge that I'm able to share here with all of you today. And so in conclusion, this is my last slide here. I would say what I've seen work for successful vendors is that they're really passionate about their product or their products, and they contribute positively to the market that they're involved in by building positive relationships and inviting people in to help make the space better. They're using photos and stories and videos about what's important to them, why their product is great. They experiment and they embrace failure. They know they're not gonna like get it exactly right every time or the first time. And they're able to adapt based on feedback that they receive from their customers and the people around them. It's also important that they express gratitude. Like, it was so great to have vendors who were always saying thank you to our volunteers and showing their appreciation for the work that went on to make that farmers market happen. And then ask for help when you need it. So there's lots of folks around that would be happy to help you with your business. And there's a few resources here. And also food and beverage is here today. And Denise already put her information in the chat. So this is the Build a Better Business program through Community Futures that I linked to on the top slide. Co-op creator is another option. There's Futurepreneur, and there's, yeah, a bunch of different options. So sadly, we don't have a lot of time for questions today, but if anyone has any more questions, I am available. You're welcome to email me. I'll put my email into the chat and just answer any questions as they come up. I think Annie's going to send out a survey. I'm going to pop a survey into the chat as well right now, but Annie's also going to send it out.
And you'll share the link to the file, the slideshow, and
yeah,
okay, great.
and I'll share the link to all of the content from this workshop as well.
All right, I'll send that out to everybody tomorrow as a follow-up email. So yeah, I guess with that, I just want to thank you, Katie, for your presentation today, and thanks everyone for joining us. And I wanted to remind you that next week, Tuesday, a little bit of a shorter session, 7 to 8 p.m., we'll be hosting a workshop called Be Prepared, Not Scared, Get Food Safe Ready for the Health Inspector. And that'll be presented by Denise from Food and Beverage, who's here with us today. She's a food safety and quality specialist for food and beverage. So you can register on the Creative Manitoba website. I'll also send a link with my email tomorrow, and feel free to help us promote that workshop. Our workshop series is drawing to an end here, so just want to thank you all for being here, and have a wonderful evening.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.